Welcome to this explainer. Have you ever had one of those moments where you just feel this sudden, completely inexplicable distance between who you are and the life you've built? Like a moment where everything around you suddenly feels strangely artificial? Well, today, we are exploring a deeply profound psychological phenomenon. We're going to break down Carl Jung's concepts of identity death and shadow integration. It's a journey into the incredibly fluid and honestly often unsettling nature of our identities. We're going to take this really complex psychological transformation and break it down into something clear and structured. Okay, let's dive right into this.
Who are you when the mask falls off? It's a direct question, I know, and it's designed to make you pause. Think about it. What if the person you've always believed yourself to be, the agreeable one, the highly reliable one, the harmless one, what if that isn't actually you at all? Jung proposed this profound and frankly really uncomfortable realization that the personality we present to the world might just be a performance, a carefully constructed mask that we've worn for so long we've literally forgotten we're wearing it.
All right, part one, the symptoms of change.
So the very first symptom you might notice isn't this sudden, triumphant burst of empowerment. Actually, scratch that. It's more like a really deep, isolating sense of disconnection. When your old identity starts dying, conversations that used to feel entirely natural suddenly just feel exhausting. You might even find yourself feeling like you're literally watching yourself perform a version of who you used to be. You start mourning a personality you haven't even fully left behind yet. And honestly, it feels exactly like grief.
So the crucial point is this. Your old identity was most likely built around getting recognition from family, from friends, and playing the specific roles you learned to play just to keep things stable. But according to Jungian psychology, that personality is often just a survival strategy. It's not the real you. And the thing about survival strategies is that they eventually expire. That sudden, strange lowliness you're feeling, it's simply the expiration of that strategy.
Which brings us to part two, the social resistance.
As you go through this, you don't usually face open, glaring hostility. Instead, you face these tiny microaggressions of identity death. A slight change in tone, maybe a little less warmth. Increased defensiveness from the people around you. Small passive comments disguised as jokes. You see, as you stop shrinking your opinions just to keep everyone else comfortable, the people closest to you begin acting subtly uneasy. They're resisting your transformation because your evolution forces them to confront their own stagnation. Deep down, they resent the possibility that you might just outgrow them.
Social environments are totally happy to support your healing as long as it remains safe and non-threatening. But notice how relationships start to fracture the moment your evolution disrupts the unspoken psychological contracts of control. So many relationships are built on this silent underlying agreement, hey, I will remain predictable if you continue accepting me. When your identity shifts, that hierarchy is instantly threatened and the contract breaks.
Let's dig into the core theory behind all this in section 3, integrating the shadow self.
Carl Jung called this massive internal shift shadow integration. At its core, it is the confrontation with your hidden self. Think about it. As a kid, you quickly learned which parts of yourself threatened your social connection, so you buried them psychologically just to survive. But here's the thing. Buried traits don't disappear. They just wait. And when they finally start to surface, the mind, which absolutely hates uncertainty, initially interprets this unfamiliar hidden self as a massive danger.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it completely shatters a massive myth. People almost always assume the shadow is something evil or malicious. It absolutely isn't. In reality, your shadow is simply everything you were forced to suppress just to remain accepted. It's your suppressed ambition, your intensity, your self-respect, and your ability to say no without feeling overwhelming guilt. When these traits resurface, someone who's been conditioned their whole life to be agreeable might genuinely experience their own new healthy boundaries as cruelty.
Let's just take a quick mental breather right here and really absorb this punchy reality. Kindness without boundaries quietly teaches people how to use you. Oof. When you finally integrate your shadow and start putting up boundaries, you're removing unlimited access to your energy. And here's the kicker. People who are accustomed to having that unlimited access to you, they will very often mistake your newfound psychological growth for arrogance.
Let's shift gears a bit. Section 4. The illusion of interaction.
This data represents a rather dark realization that tends to hit you right in the middle of transformation. A staggering percentage of everyday human interaction isn't actually authentic connection at all, it's entirely performative. We're talking 40% driven by pure dependency, 30% by the fear of isolation, and 20% by self-erasure disguised as virtue. Only about 10% is real authentic connection. People learn early on which masks keep their relationships functioning, and they wear them for so long that they completely forget the mask was ever a mask to begin with.
Why does this happen? Well, it happens because our unconscious mind absolutely prioritizes survival over truth. To belong to the group, people learned basically split themselves in half. They keep the socially acceptable part visible and bury everything else. They'd rather choose the comfort of an illusion and a socially acceptable mask over the massive, terrifying risk of authentic exposure. Because let's be honest, to be truly seen means risking abandonment.
Which brings us to the hardest part of the journey. Section 5. Surviving the psychological void.
If we map out the stages of this transformation on a timeline, you'll see the void sitting smack dab in the middle, right between resistance and awakening. This space exists because your old identity actually dies much, much faster than your new one forms. You are literally left floating in a space between versions of yourself. Understanding this is so crucial because it completely normalizes the utter chaos you might be feeling right now.
Inside that void, you experience what we call the emptiness of observation. You have zero certainty, no clear personality, and no stable social role to fall back on. You become painfully, acutely aware of who you are not anymore, but you don't quite know who you are yet. And because human beings crave a sense of identity almost as much as we crave physical survival, sitting in this liminal space leaves the ego feeling wildly exposed and completely terrified.
Let's move to and see how this builds into an active internal rebellion. Because the void is just so ridiculously uncomfortable, your psyche literally fights for survival. It does this by creating these intense, overpowering cravings for old distractions, compulsions toward expired habits, and this weird, twisted nostalgia for environments that once seriously damaged you. Your nervous system will actively try to sabotage your new peace and pull you backward to that toxic predictability, simply because that suffering feels familiar.
But if you can push through, you reach Section 6, uncovering the real self.
I really want to emphasize this phrasing here. The real self is not found. There is no grand, perfectly enlightened revelation waiting for you at the end of some rainbow. Instead, you are simply removing the artificial layers of people-pleasing, emotional dependency, and unconscious imitation that you've been building up over an entire lifetime. It's a subtraction process, not an addition. When you contrast these two states of being side by side, the difference is just staggering. Look at the constructed persona. It requires endless maintenance and immense psychological exhaustion just to keep the act going. But the authentic self, it's quieter. It's far heavier, but it's immensely stabilizing. It destroys illusions for the sheer sake of truth, trading that exhausting fear of disappearing for a raw, totally honest awareness.
So, that brings us right back to the ultimate existential question. Who are you without the performance? Who are you without the constant need for approval? Honestly, very few people can tolerate these questions for long, because beneath that bubbly social personality often sits a lot of unresolved existential emptiness. But learning to sit with that silence, that is exactly how you uncover the real you.
Let this powerful insight really sink in for a second. Outgrowing your old survival strategy, it is not a failure, and it absolutely isn't a sign that you are broken. It is the ultimate psychological awakening. The greatest tragedy wouldn't be losing your old friends or shedding your old habits. The true danger is never waking up at all and spending your entire life locked inside a protective cage of your own making.
We're going to wrap up our explainer today with this one final provocative thought. Take a moment right now to deeply introspect. Are the performances you put on starting to feel heavy? Are you starting to notice the artificiality in your everyday interactions? Because if you are, know that the chaos you feel isn't the end. It is the chaotic, incredibly beautiful beginning of integrating your shadow and finally meeting your true self. Keep exploring, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.